Hey guys, I hope you're all doing well today. So today we're going to implement a image slider using HTML, CSS, and vanilla JavaScript. And it's going to be pretty straightforward with the UI here. So we just have two arrows on the left and right side. And when you click on it, it'll transition the image to the left or right. And I'll show you guys how to do this in VS Code. So let's get started. Alright guys, I have VS Code open on the left here, and then I got my browser. So a couple things I want to do before we get started is I have materializecss open here, and we're going to use their icons library so that we can implement these left and right arrows. So I'll paste this website link in the description. So I'm going to just copy that, and I'm going to create my index.html file here. Okay, let's go ahead and also create the CSS file and the JavaScript file as well. Okay, so I'm going to close out of the side tab, sidebar, and I'm going to do Shift 1, Enter, and it'll create my emmet for me. And then I'm going to name this image slider, and I'm going to have a link tag here. Okay, and I don't need to actually use emmet. I'm just going to paste it directly here. So now we have the materializecss icon library available to us. So now we can, I believe it's called left arrow and right arrow. Let me just search for arrow. Yeah, it's keyboard_arrow. Okay, and the next thing I want to do is let's jump over to pexels.com because I just got these images directly from there. And what we'll do is in our current project folder, we'll create a image folder. And I'm just going to have this open in my file explorer. Okay. So I'm just going to pick whatever photos you guys want to see in the image slider. I'm just going to download them. I always do a custom 1920 by 1080. So I would probably say pick 5. From my downloads folder, I just cut and pasted them in here. And then I also renamed them to image 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It just doesn't matter what the order, so that it's easier to include them in our HTML. So now I'm going to expand this a little, and I'm going to close out of these two tabs because we don't need that. And I'm going to open a new one, and I'm going to say open with live server. If you guys don't have that extension, you want to download that so you can follow along. So this extension live server right here. All right, so let's get started. So in our HTML, we are going to have a section with a class name of image container. Image container. Okay, and then we're going to have 5 image tags here with a class of image. Yeah, just with the class of image should be fine. And we're going to do multiply by 5. Okay, and now we can include our images here. So I'm just going to copy and paste for the source. Okay. All right, so we have all 5 of the images loaded, which is what we want. And we'll fix this up with a CSS. So the next thing we want to do is, actually, let's fix it up with the CSS and then we'll add the arrows. So I'm going to link my CSS by doing link:/CSS. And I name my CSS file style.css, so I don't got to change anything there. And then I'll do the same thing here with script. And call this index.js. Okay, so in my CSS, I'm going to have the, let me do something in the body real fast. Let me get rid of this margin and reset it. And now in the image section, let me make sure that's what I called it, image container. Okay, so what we're going to do is give this a max width of 700 pixels to make it responsive. And then we are going to use Flexbox here. All right. Okay, so now all the images will be stacked like that. And I know it's difficult to see, So what I'm going to do here is say overflow X, and I'm going to do hidden. Now if you do that, you only see this one photo. Okay, so now let's just give the image class here some styling so that we can make the image smaller. So I'm going to do image width, I'm going to do as 100%, which will do 100% of its parent. Okay, there we go. And then we're going to give this some box shadow, 2 pixels for 16:0 RGBA, and let's do like 0.3. Okay, and also we want to center align this, so we could do that by doing margin 0 for top and bottom, and then auto left and right. And let's push this down a little. So let's add some margin to this actually. Let's do 50 pixels. Okay, that's fine. And now we have our first image always showing there. Okay, so we're gonna also include these 1 of 5 text here, which will say, okay, you're currently on image 1 out of 5. So we're gonna have a UL here, and we're gonna give this a class of image list. And then we're going to create a couple LIs here. So we're going to keep this at 1, because by default the first one should always be, but on page load it should always be 1. So we're going to say image current number, so that we can use JavaScript to get this class and then change it. And then we'll have another li, which is just going to be a of, or we could do a span there, whatever your preference is. And then we'll do another li with a class of image total number. Okay, and this is going to be left blank. Say you're getting these images from your server, or these images will be added on. We would probably get this from the back end, the total number, and then just fill it in using JavaScript. Okay, so let's add some styling to the UL in the list. So I have my image list class. I'm going to say display flex. Okay, and then I'm going to get rid of the list style and set that to none. Okay, cool. And I'm going to justify the content to center. And I'm also going to align the items to center as well. I think the margin, there's a margin left when you add a UL tag, so I'm going to get rid of that, as well as the padding as left. Okay, yeah, as you can see there, shifted to the left and it's now even in the center. And now let's give some styling to the li tags. Let's set a margin of 3 pixels left and right. And let's increase the font size here. Okay. And the reason why there's so much gap is because I added a margin here. I'm going to get rid of that. And there you go. That should be fine. That one of looks really odd right now. So we're going to add the arrows now. And we're going to simply add the arrows in the section using the button tag. All right, and we're going to say in here, we're going to add the I tag and then give it a class of material icons. And then in between the I tag, we're going to say keyboard, arrow, left, and then the button will have a class of left arrow. Okay, we'll fix that in a bit. And I'm going to just copy this and paste it at the very bottom. We're going to do right arrow, and then we're going to do right here. Okay, so that's going to be cut off because of the overflow. So let's style this in CSS. So we have the left arrow and the right arrow. And it's going to share a couple properties here. So what we're going to do here is say the z index will be 1 because we want them above the image, if that makes sense. We don't want them behind the image. Okay, and then we want them to be a top of 45%. So we're going to set this to a position absolute. And we're going to add a position relative to the image container. Okay, so now what we'll do is get rid of this button styling. So we can say image container, I believe, button. And let's get rid of the background and the border. Let's add a cursor of pointer here. And let's also change the color to just white. Okay, and then let's add, let's decrease the opacity here. And we will increase the font size. So to increase the font size, we can say, let's do it up here. We need to increase it using the I tag. So we're going to say image container button and then I, and then we're going to say font size 3M. Okay, and now what we're going to do here is we're going to have some subtle difference in the left arrow, and we're going to say left 10 pixels, and the right arrow is going to be right 10 pixels, so that they'll be on their respective sides. And now we got them placed where we want them. Okay, so now I believe that's it for the HTML. So we don't need to add anything here. So when you click on it, we'll have the outline. So now I think we can jump into the JavaScript. So in the JavaScript, it's going to be a little interesting. I had two JavaScript files when I was developing this. So I'm going to call this a image slider. Let's do image slider.js. So if you guys are familiar with carousels from Bootstrap or Materialize, this is pretty much what we're implementing, but without a framework. So I want to create a prototype object where it will contain all the data that we need for the images. So I'm going to call this image slider should be fine. And we're going to call this function image slider. Okay, probably not the best name. I just can't think of a better name right now. So this image slider will be a prototype object that will be used here, and this index.js will get any information that it needs, like the image, the current image that it's on, the total count, things like that. All right, so let's get started with the prototype object. So I'm going to create a couple of global variables in this object called current image number and set that to equal to 0. The total count, which will be also 0. And we're going to have an array called image list set to an empty array. Okay, so we're going to use this image number. Since it's going to be an array, it's going to be indexed starting from 0. That's why I started it at 0. So now we're going to have a function here. And this function is going to be called Populate Images. So when the page is loaded, what we want to do is populate all the images that exist in the DOM. Okay, so that whenever we're navigating through it, this array will keep hold of everything. Now, in our case, it's pretty straightforward. We have five images. And if this was coming from the back end or something, I would probably give these some IDs. So I'm going to start these IDs from 0 because in our prototype object, we're going to have an array and it'll be easier to do it that way. Okay, and then I'm going to add 4 here, and that should be it. All right, so now in Populate Images, what we're going to do is we're going to say let image elements, okay? We're going to grab all the image elements from the DOM using query selector, and we can say image, I believe is the class that we gave. Of course, you would want these classes to be more descriptive. We'll get all the image elements now, and we're going to just simply say if there's no images that exist, okay, if the length is equal to 0, we're just going to return. And actually what we should do in here is say 0 out of 0. We'll come back to that after. And now we're going to loop through this and say image elements and say for each image will be the parameter here. All right, so in here, what we're going to do is just simply push to our array, image list dot push, and we're going to grab the data attribute, which we gave data-id. So I'm going to convert that to a int, because it's never fun playing with string numbers in an array, too many conversions. So we can just simply say parse int image.dataset.id. All right. So we have that. So let's give that a test and see if that worked. So in the index.js, so one thing I forgot to do here is include the other script as well, which is going to be image slider. So we're going to add a event listener for when the page is loaded. So we're going to say window.add event listener, and we're going to say DOM content loaded. So as soon as a page is loaded, the DOM is loaded, I should say. Okay. So what we're going to do here is we're going to get our object. So we're going to load our object here. We're going to create it and say image slider is equal to new image slider. Okay, we can directly access that because it's in the same scope of the window, so we can access the image slider from this file. Okay, so in here we're going to say image slider dot populate images, and well, we can't really see that, so what we're going to do here is just console.log image list. I'm going to open my console here. One thing that I forgot to mention is we want to load this one first. Okay, so it looks like I messed up again. Let's see that. Okay, so query selector dot image, that is the class that we gave it. Okay, so the reason why we're getting this error is because I forgot to add the document query selector all, where we get all the image classes and not just the first one. So now you can see our array is pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. I would say in a real world case, if you guys were implementing this, these IDs would be a little bit more complex, like given not just 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, we would probably have some image ID where we grab the ID of it. Maybe if it's stored coming from a database, like that's probably what we would use instead. But in this case, since it's just a simple tutorial, this is fine. All right. So that's it for populate images. So the next thing we want to do is we want to be able to grab the, when you click on the arrow, we want to be able to get the current image count, a number, and then return the next one. So we're going to say this.get next image number equal to function. Okay, and I'm going to do that, and we're going to create a constant, say next image is equal to, so we have current image number is here, So we're going to say current image number plus 1. And we're going to say return image list next image. And let's give this a better name. I know a better name than that. Let's do index, since we're accessing the array index. Okay. Okay, so now one edge case that we want to do is, let's say we're on the last image and the next button gets clicked. Well, we don't want to, it'll be undefined in that case, since it doesn't exist in the array. So what we want to do is say if next image index is equal to the total count, and the total count here, we're going to set this, forgot to do that, we're going to set this total count at the bottom here, and we're going to say image elements dot length. Okay, so now what we're going to do is say return -1. So in here, if we get -1 at all, that we know not to transition to the next image or the previous image, because we're going to be implementing the same thing pretty much. So we're going to say get previous image number. Okay, and we're going to say previous image index current number -1, and we're going to say if previous image index is equal to, so in this case, if it's at 0, then we're going to check if it's equal to -1. We're going to simply return a -1 here. Otherwise, we're going to return image list the index, previous index. All right, so now shall we work on getting the transition set up? So we'll add the CSS transitions last. Let's get the logic in here and get that working. Okay, so a couple things we want to do is when the DOM content is loaded, we want to add some event handlers. So we're going to do query selector, left arrow, and we're going to do on click, and we're going to create a function and say show previous image. We're going to do the same thing except with the right arrow. Show next image. And let's create these functions. Show previous image and show next image. Okay, so let's write the logic for what we need to do to get the previous image. And also another thing we want to do is we want to fill in this total count here when the DOM content is loaded. So what we can do is we can return the total count once the populate images is done. So let's have a function here that will do a return for us. So we can say get total image count. And we'll simply just return total count. Okay, so we'll say document.query selector. And we'll say image total count. I think I didn't call it count, I called it number. Yeah, image total number. Dot inner text. And we'll set that to image slider dot get total image count, which is a function. Cool. So we will do that. Okay, so forgot to add the period here. Okay, so now the 5 will be loaded in. Excellent. So I think we're done with this now for now. Now let's work on the show previous image logic, okay? Since it starts with the first number, first image. Let's go and work on the show next image so that we can actually see what's going on, and then we can test those functions individually in order. Okay, so for the show next image, what we're going to do here is first we're going to create a constant called current image, and that will get, we need to get the current image count. Okay, so I'm just creating these functions as I need them. So get current image count, return current image number. Okay, and sorry, this should not be called count, it should be number. Current image, and now image slider, get current image number. So now in this case it'll be 0. Okay, so now we have the current image, and what we want to do is get the next image. So we can say next image number is equal to image slider dot get next image number. Okay, so now we have that. So what we want to do when we're actually transitioning here between the images, we want to technically hide this one for now and then show the next one. Okay, so just to show you guys that we are getting the correct image number, let's just console.log and check it out. So if I click on next here, we should get 1. Okay, perfect. So we want to have a check here because next image number could be -1. So we could say if next image number is equal to -1, well, all we're going to do is just return. All right, nothing should happen. Now, if it's not -1, what we're going to do is we're going to update the current image number. Okay, so we need a function for that. Let's create a function saying this.update image number equal to function, and we're going to say current image number, and this needs to take in a argument. So this will have a parameter of let's see, image number. All right, so we can say image slider dot update image number, and we're going to say next image number. All right, so the next thing we're going to do here is now we need to get the image elements. So let's create a couple functions here because we're going to be needing to do that constantly for show next and show previous. So let's write that once and keep calling it as we need it. So let's call this get image element. Okay, and this is going to take in image number. What we're going to do here is say return document.querySelector, and we're going to do image, and we're going to get the data ID. So we're going to concatenate this. Let me push this down. Plus image number plus, and then end it with the quote and bracket. Okay, so that'll return that, and we're going to create these as constants up here. Okay, we're going to say get current image element equal to get image element, and we're going to simply just pass in current image, and I'm going to redefine this variable name since it's a number. Okay, do we need to change it anywhere else? I don't think so. And we're also going to create another constant called next image element. So our one function will be really helpful to us. Next image number. Okay, so we got the current image element and the next image element. So what we're going to do here is say current image element, and we're going to just use the hidden property. and we're going to set that to true. And we're going to do next image element, and we're going to set the, well, technically it's not hidden. So one thing I forgot to do here in the image tags is let's have a hidden property attribute, I should say. All of them except for the first one, because technically they should all be hidden. So I just realized, since we added the hidden attribute in our CSS, we technically don't need to account for this overflow X as hidden. So what we want to do now is say hidden is equal to false. Okay. And I believe that should be it. So let's give this a try and see if it's, yeah. So one thing that I forgot is, ooh, that image was very blurry, is to update this count. So we'll need to do that. Let's have a function. Let's do it in, it doesn't matter, we can just do it here. Function, update, what do we give this class name? Okay, let's do update image current text. And we'll pass in the image number here. And we're just simply going to say document.querySelector image current number. Yeah. Dot inner text, and set that equal to image number. Okay, so if I click on that, oh, we need to call it. So we need to call that, let's say, I would call that right here. And let's see, update image current text, pass in the next image number, not the element. Okay, so if I click on that, is there something that let me see if there's any console error. No? Okay. So update. Got it. So we need to do +1 here, because technically, since the index starts at 0, we need to do +1 for whenever we want to display it. Okay, cool. So now let's work on the show previous image. So it's going to be almost the same exact concept here, except it's just going to be reversed. So I'm going to copy this first line because it'll be the same. And I'm going to say here, const previous image number is equal to image slider dot get previous image number. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to copy this here with the elements. And we're just going to call this previous image element and pass in the previous image number. Okay. So, and now we're going to do the same check here. Say if previous image number is equal to -1, we are going to return. Otherwise, all we're going to do is say image slider dot update image number. We're going to do the previous image number, and we're going to do the update for the image current text, pass in the previous image number -1. We're not going to do -1, we're going to do +1, because I just thinking of previous, I just thought of subtracting, but we should be adding 1 to it because of the array index. Okay, and then next thing we're going to do is set this current image element hidden attribute to true, and the previous image element, and set that to false. Case. Alright, so if I click on previous, nothing will happen to it, which is exactly what we want. Awesome. And let's test this. Yep, it's not going. Okay, so we have a working image slider. So let's add some CSS animation, because this would be nothing without it. So we're going to create a couple of classes and a couple of animations. So I'm going to have a class called transition left, and leave those empty for now, and transition right. Okay, we're going to add 2 keyframes. So one is going to be transition left. And what we're going to do here, so when it's at 0% of that keyframe, we're going to have you be using the transform quality, attribute, property, sorry, not attribute, property. Get these key terms mixed up sometimes. So at 0%, whenever you transition to the left, okay, it's going to be at 0. Okay, the image will be at 0, where it's currently at now. At 100%, the image will transform to the left. Okay, we want it to go to the left. So we're going to say negative 100%. And I forgot to add translate. Okay. So just to give this visual example, if I was here and I clicked left, what would happen is, so this, okay, just to give a visual example here. So whenever I click on the next, what I want to happen is I want this image to transition to the left, and then I want the next image to also transition to the left. Okay, so hopefully that made sense. What we're going to do here is just add the animation. So we're going to say animation, transition, left. Let's do 0.8 seconds linear, and then both. All right, so in order to get this to work, what we need to do is create a couple functions here. So we're going to say transition, image, left. I think a better name for this is translate instead of transition. And that's going to take in a couple parameters, okay? So we're going to we need the image element to add the classes to it, and then we also need a flag. So we need a flag for the hide image. So at the end of this, we were hiding the image. So we need to do that in this function only. And this will just be a true or false value. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is guard our function. So we're going to say if image element, it could be null in this case, we're just going to return it. We don't want to do any transition. We're going to do the same thing for, yeah, no, that should be it. Hide image. Okay, yeah, we can do the same thing for hide image. So if it's, in this case, null or undefined, or in any case, we want to just set it equal to false. Okay, and then the next thing we want to do is we'll get the image element. We want to add the class of translate left. That's what I called it, right? Transition left. Let's keep all this consistent. Transition to translate. We're going to do the add function, and we're going to pass in translate left. Okay, and so after that transition happens, we need to remove that class. Okay, so we're going to use a set timeout function here. And I set the animation duration for 0.8 seconds. So I'm going to run this for 900 milliseconds, okay? And in here, we're just simply going to remove the class, which we added earlier, which is translate left. Okay, so that'll remove it. And then we have this flag here, right? If hide image, so if hide image is equal to true, all we're going to do is image element will be hidden. Okay, let's see how we can implement this function. So in our show next image, I'm going to remove these. I'm going to call our function translate image left. So the first image element we're going to pass in is the current one, And at the end of this, after the set timeout is executed, we want to hide the image. And then we're going to translate the next one, next image element. And for now, we're going to leave this as false because we don't want to hide that image. So if I click on next here, okay, so one thing we need to do is unhide the image element. So, because currently it's hidden. We're going to set this to false. Let's try that again. All right, guys, so this is probably, this error happened due to my bad naming scheme, I guess. I guess having next image probably in front of both variables just sometimes can be problematic. So as you guys can see there, we have our image. Let's try that again. Okay. So I noticed one problem. I always do that to myself when creating these tutorials, is when I don't think I need something, I tend to remove it during the tutorial, and I realized that I shouldn't have had. So so overflow X hidden still needs to be true. Sorry, still needs to be there. I'll tell you why. So now it'll transition within the actual container and it won't go outside. When I removed that, the image was going outside and you could see it. Well, that's why I had added it. So now translate right will work. Okay. So now let's work on to, I shouldn't say translate right, but I should say getting the next image transition works, because technically we're transitioning it to the left. Okay. So now let's do translate image right. And this is going to be almost identical. Okay, so I'm going to copy these guard if statements here. I'm going to do the same thing in here. And I'm going to do translate right instead. Okay, so let's give this a try. Okay, that did not work. Oh, in the style.css, I forgot to probably add the, yep, I didn't even add the keyframe. So keyframes, transition, right. And now this is going to be at 0%. We're going to do transform, translate, X. Okay, so in this case, if I do transition right, what's going to happen is it's going to, so transitioning to the right, well, it'll go that way. So at 0%, I mean, yeah, it's going to be at negative 100%, okay? Because at 100%, this will be the current position for at 0%. Hopefully that makes sense. And then at 100%, what we're going to do is transform it, translate X back to 0. Okay, hopefully that made sense, guys. So we're going to do animation, transition, right, 0.8 seconds, linear, both. Well, I already implemented the function, so let's see if it's working. It's still not working. That is because I did not update the show previous image. Okay. Yep, that's exactly why. So we're going to do the same thing here, where we do the previous image element dot hidden will be set to false, and then we're going to do translate image right, and we're going to pass in the current image element, set that to true, and do the same thing with the previous image element. And we don't have to pass in anything, because technically if you don't pass in anything here, it'll be undefined and it'll just set it to false. But ideally it would be better to pass in a false value here. All right, so awesome. All right, so one more edge case that I wanted to tell you guys about. So if I spam click this, you see what just happened? it'll break that. So what we want to do here is let's have a variable called slide lock and set that equal to false. So what's going to happen here is when this animation is happening, we're going to have the slide lock variable set to true so that it doesn't keep transitioning to the next image. And the place we can implement that is simply here. If slide lock is equal to true, we're just going to return. And I'm going to copy that and also do that here. Okay. So now we need to set it false. So we can set it false right here. Slide lock is equal to false. Copy this and set that equal to set that here as well. All right, so let's try it. Oh, it's still happening. Where am I setting it to? Oh, am I not? I'm not setting it to true. Well, that's why. Okay, so we want to set it to true right here. Slide lock is equal to true. Same thing in the previous. Slide lock is equal to true. Now it should not happen. Okay, as you guys can see, if I spam click this, it's just not doing anything. It's not forcing itself, and looks like I'm not able to hit in the previous because slide lock is probably still set to true, and I did not set it. Oh, I got you. I know why. So we need to also set it to false if this is -1. Because I clicked on next here and it set the slide lock to true, but since it returned here, slide lock was never reset to false. I'm going to do the same thing here. Okay, let's give this a try. Okay, so if I click here, I should still be able to go back. Awesome, guys. Well, here you guys have a image slider. I hope you guys learned something from this tutorial, and if you did, please consider liking and subscribing. It would really help out the channel. Thank you so much for you guys' support. See you next time. Bye-bye.